Hey there, glad you're here. So, let me ask, have you been wondering if there's another stimulus check coming or trying to make sense of all the headlines about President Trump's new economic bill? There's been a lot of talk, but this big, beautiful bill doesn't include new checks. Instead, it brings major changes that could still impact your taxes, your benefits, and yes, your wallet. From eliminating federal taxes on tips and overtime to possible cuts to programs like Medicaid, this bill could shape how much money you keep, how you get help, and what shows up in your bank account each month. Stick around because we're going to break it all down in a way that's easy to follow and could help you make smarter choices with your money. And before we get going, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What part of this bill concerns you the most? Or what are you hoping it might help with? And if you find this helpful, consider subscribing so you don't miss future updates like this. Now, when President Trump talks about the big, beautiful bill, he's referring to a sweeping package that pulls together a lot of different policy pieces. This isn't just about stimulus checks. It's a broader economic strategy, one that ties back to ideas from his first term, but retools them for today's challenges. Let's start with something that's already catching attention. Taxes. One of the most talked about changes is the elimination of federal taxes on tips and overtime pay. For anyone working hourly jobs or in the service industry, that could mean keeping more of what you earn. The administration estimates it could save someone between $1,675 and $1,150 a year. That's not nothing. That could cover groceries for a month or two, or maybe give a little breathing room to someone who's been stretched thin. And for seniors, the bill adds a boost to the standard deduction. If you're retired or semi-retired and still filing taxes, this could mean an extra $1,600 or even close to $2,000 in savings, depending on your situation. Not everyone benefits the same way, of course, but this part of the bill is definitely aimed at easing the pressure on folks living on fixed incomes. Now, that might sound great, and for some people will be, but there's a bigger picture here that's important to talk about because for every tax cut or savings on your paycheck, there's also the question of how the government pays for it. 1. Part of the bill that's getting a lot of attention is something called Opportunity Zones 2.0. If you're not familiar, Opportunity Zones were originally created back in 2017 to encourage investment in lower-income areas. They attracted billions of dollars, but there were some issues like money going into already gentrifying neighborhoods instead of places that really needed help. With the new version, the rules are stricter. More of the investment is supposed to go to rural communities and areas with deep poverty. And there are better incentives for investors who commit to keeping their money there for the long term. So in theory, this could bring jobs and infrastructure to areas that have been left behind. But here's the catch. The new rules don't even kick in until 2027. And unless old zones are renominated, they're not included at all. That creates a gap where investment could actually slow down before it speeds up. So, if you're living in a small town or an area that's been designated as an opportunity zone in the past, you might want to keep an eye on whether your area makes the cut moving forward. And also, while we're on the topic of where the money's going, we need to talk about where it's being taken from. To offset the cost of the bill, which could range anywhere from $2.1 trillion to $5 trillion over 10 years, there are big proposed cuts to Medicaid and SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. This includes work requirements for able-bodied adults, stricter eligibility checks, and other restrictions. Now, some lawmakers are arguing that these cuts are necessary to prevent fraud and make sure the safety net is really for the people who need it most. But others are warning this could take health care away from millions of people, especially in rural areas. In fact, one senator said it could even shut down hospitals in the state. That's serious. And then there's the elephant in the room, stimulus checks. I've seen the same headlines you probably have. Talk of a $5,000 Doge dividend linked to savings from the Department of Government Efficiency. It got people excited. But as of right now, there's no bill in Congress authorizing that kind of payment. No funding mechanism, no official timeline, just an idea that's been floating around and gaining traction online. So, what does that mean for you? Well, if you're hoping for another stimulus check, I'd keep your expectations low until we see something in writing. The IRS hasn't confirmed anything, and the deadline to claim the older $2,400 stimulus payment has already passed. Also, let's talk about how all of this ties into the economy more broadly. The administration says this bill will boost the economy by 4 to 5% over 4 years. That's a big promise. They're pointing to the idea that more money in your pocket equals more spending, which leads to more jobs and growth. But not everyone agrees. Some economists are saying those projections might be too optimistic. One model from Penn Wharton says, the impact could be closer to 0.5% over 10 years, and only if other factors like tariffs are rolled back. In fact, some worry that combining tax cuts with high spending and protectionist trade policies could end up doing more harm than good, and Wall Street is already showing signs of concern. When investors get nervous about the national debt or trade policy, it affects things like interest rates, stock prices, and even your retirement accounts. Speaking of which, this bill also has implications for folks who rely on public services. Cuts to Medicaid, for example, could affect not just individual coverage, but hospital funding, especially in places with high uninsured rates. So, while you might save on taxes in the short term, you could see costs rise elsewhere. Maybe in healthcare, maybe in your local taxes. Another thing to consider is the political strategy behind all this. The bill was passed in the House, but just barely. The Senate could break it apart or change it significantly. Some lawmakers have already said they won't support it unless major pieces are removed or rewritten. This means the final version of the bill could look very different, and it could take weeks or months before we know exactly what's going to happen. So then where does this leave us? On one hand, there are clear wins here for workers, especially people in service jobs or living on fixed incomes. The tax savings could be real and for some meaningful. And for investors or developers looking at rural America, the updated opportunity zones could present new possibilities. But on the other hand, there are trade-offs, reduced support for low-income families, delays in investment, and real questions about how much this will truly stimulate the economy over time. What I'd recommend, if you're watching this and wondering what to do next, is to keep track of your own financial picture first. If your income comes mostly from tips or part-time gigs, you could see real benefits if the bill passes. But if you rely on Medicaid or food assistance, I'd suggest staying informed and speaking with a benefits advisor just in case your eligibility changes. And as always, let's stay engaged. Leave a comment and let me know, how do you feel about this bill? Is it helping you, hurting you, or are you still waiting for more details like a lot of us? Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next.